G'day guys, how you going? Hope you're all having a fantastic day. I'm going to be doing another movie review this afternoon, and this one is a UK horror film, so British horror. You don't have to worry about subtitles if English is your first language. It's not often that I do an English speaking review, but this is the day that I'm going to be doing one. As I said, UK horror film made in 2010, directed by Paul Andrew Williams, and this film is called Cherry Tree Lane. And the story is as follows. Christine and Mike are an ordinary middle-class couple, living in what could be any house on any street. It's an average evening as they prepare dinner, open a bottle of wine and bicker as they wait for their teenage son Sebastian to come home from football training. A ring at the door is answered by Christine, a terrible scream, and she reappears, a knife at her throat, a gang of teenagers at her back, who tie them both up. It seems their son Sebastian has snitched on one of them, and they are here to exact the worst revenge imaginable to a parent. But in the sincere belief they hold the moral high ground, that this is the right thing to do. They settle in to wait for Sebastian to come home. So basically it's a home invasion movie, a very, very simple plot, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, I don't want to ruin the experience, but basically what it is, a gang of 3 teenagers, they break into a home, and they're after the son of the mother and father. Now, mother and father at the start of the film, they're having dinner, and these 3 teenagers break in. The son is gone, he's at football practice, so he's not home yet. And so the teenagers basically tie up the parents and they're waiting for Sebastian to come home. It turns out that Sebastian has snitched on one of the teenage boys' cousins, and he went to jail for a very long time, so they're very, very angry. And they're going to get the worst possible revenge, going to do some very nasty stuff to Sebastian. But in the meantime, they have the parents tied up and they're going to have their own little bit of fun with them. So it's a horrific situation. The parents have to pray that Sebastian doesn't come home because they know what's waiting. That's not a question of if Sebastian will come home, it's a question of when Sebastian will come home. And that's basically a very suspenseful kind of wait, as the parents have to try and figure something out. They're very, very helpless, but they have to pray for a miracle in order to get their son out of here alive. And, themselves out alive. So that's your basic synopsis. Hopefully that left a little bit of interest in it for you to go and watch it. But if you want to know more, then please get the film and see it for yourself. That's as far as I'm going to go with the story. Now my thoughts on the film. Being a UK horror film, I had a high expectation. You've got recent films like Eden Lake, Mum and Dad, that were very, very brutal, and this one had been compared to them both. So going into this one, I thought this is going to be a very disturbing ride, but in the end I was very, very disappointed. Now I'll go through some of the styles of the director. Now whether or not it's good or bad, in my book it was bad because I'm not a fan of the way he styled this movie. Now, if you're a fan of Michael Haneke, who is a German director, he directed such films as Funny Games and Hidden. If you're a fan of his camera work, then you'll get a lot out of this film, because I thought that the director in this film really did take inspiration from Michael Haneke. And the reason I say that is because some of the shots in this film are very sort of plain, very, very still, and they, in my opinion, they went on for too long. Now, for example, in Funny Games, especially the remake, Michael Haneke had a scene where the guy was drying his mobile phone, and that scene just went on for ages, and to me it was very, very boring, and to me it's a sign of lazy filmmaking. And I know he was trying to get a unique style, but it's a style that I didn't really like at all. And the director of this film really had the same sort of style as Haneke, and that's something I really hated, and that's something that contributed to my disliking of this movie. I thought that a lot of the scenes were unnecessary and they dragged. It's a 78-minute film, so 78 minutes is not a long film at all, and it really has to get to the point very quickly. And I just felt that this film had 30 minutes of material but just dragged it out to 78 minutes, which is a real disappointment, because from a short film you really want something fast-paced, and this one really did struggle with the pacing. When the home invasion first started, it was early on in the film, I thought, this is going to be good because the tension levels are rising, but then they just go down. There is way too much dialogue in this film, there is not enough action, lots and lots of dialogue, and, don't get me wrong, I like dialogue, I like films that have a lot of dialogue, but having seen the cover of this film and the back, I wasn't expecting something that would, rely more on dialogue rather than suspense. There's no gore, it's very, very mild, it's off screen, so it's nothing that's going to really disturb you. As I said, the home invasion part is disturbing, but the way it's been done, it really does release all tension levels, because halfway through the film you're just thinking, God, I'm nearly falling to sleep here because, the characters weren't likable. Their husband and wife, I really didn't like the wife. I thought she was very, very snobby. They have a background story, which I'm not going to go into, which really makes you dislike the mother even more. You don't know about Sebastian because he really doesn't show himself. The teenagers who break in are stereotypical. There's the psycho, there's a level-headed one, and then there's the dumb one. So, a little imagination in the villains. They're all teenagers, so they don't have that much of an intimidating quality. But yeah, my greatest disappointment in the film was the fact that it did drag a lot, and the ending wasn't really rewarding. I felt that it was quite tame, so to compare this one to Eden Lake and Mum and Dad is really missing the point because it really does not reach the levels of those films at all. If I was going to say something good about the film, I thought, the dialogue was strong and it did paint real people, but it just, yeah, it was just too slow. And for a film that, the expectation levels, a lot of people saying how disturbing it is, I really, really wanted more and I expected more, and it's just a real letdown. So, fans of Michael Haneke, you might get something out of this because, as I said, there are a lot of qualities about this film that remind me of Michael Haneke, but I'm really not a fan of his. I feel that he is a lazy director, in my opinion. Don't, bash me for saying that. I'm not, it's not necessarily how it is, it's just how he comes across to me. And I felt that, this film, it was lacking. It really didn't have any quality that would keep you in suspense throughout the entire film. And in the end, it's a forgettable film, and it's a film that I'm not going to recommend. It's really disappointing, especially because of the quality that British horror have maintained lately. But this is not one of the it's not one of the memorable films coming out of Britain. So that's my review of Cherry Tree Lane. Disappointing effort, but some of you out there might like it. Hopefully this review has left a little bit of interest. I mean, it's a 78-minute long film. It's not overly long, so you'll get through it, but you might be a little bit disappointed by the end result. Alright guys, that's it for my review. I'll be reviewing a Colombian film very, very soon, so until then, take care of yourselves, stay safe, and I'll see you later.